Welcome to today's session, everyone. So today we'll be focusing on integrating the science of reading. So we're looking at fast-paced sequence lessons perfect for young learners. So thank you for joining us. As the science of reading continues to evolve and shape the way we teach, our goal is to nurture you as learners who are independent, capable, and motivated to learn, whilst trying to make your life easier as a teacher as well. This can be achieved through evidence-based teaching strategies that are grounded in educational research. Today we'll be hosted by Amy and Amanda. Amy is a teacher. She still wears the quirky glasses to prove it, who has worked in classrooms across Sydney, holds a Bachelor of Education honours and Masters in Publishing. She's been working in the ed tech for more than a decade. And one of her key passions is understanding the science behind how children learn and read, and how we can foster this in the classroom and beyond into the home. Amanda has spent 24 years in educational publishing, first in editorial with Pascal Press and Blake Education, working on the primary maths textbooks and classroom readers, before moving on to Reading Eggs from its very inception. Obsessed with optimizing the program and the customer experience, Amanda spends a lot of her time liaising between the teachers and Reading Eggs to help us deliver better ways to learn. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Amy and Amanda for today's presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I've put together a few screens to help talk through the instructional research around Reading Eggs. I am conscious that we only have 30 minutes, so I promise to try to stay on task as much as possible. So it's widely researched and understood that reading is a complex skill. And as teachers, sure, don't we know in the classroom how difficult it is with reading instruction? But we also know that cracking the code of reading is essential to success all across the curriculum. So what I really want to go through is, how can the science of reading help us? And I mean really help us by finding the best ways for our students to learn to read. In today's session, through looking at instructional design, we'll uncover how the science of reading research informs the teaching of the 5 essential pillars, which as teachers we know well: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We'll look at the role of explicit systematic teaching in the innovative map design to minimize cognitive load for students. We'll also dip into cognitive research about the shared processes and knowledge that makes the connection between the 5 pillars essential. My goal today is to show you how the fast-paced sequence lessons in Reading Eggs, Reading Express, and Fast Phonics are all built on the foundations of best practice, evidence-based research.
Okay, and now before Amy goes too far on a deep dive into all of that science of reading, I just wanted to take a quick minute to talk you all through the range of the program, just so when Amy's talking about it, you understand what parts she's mentioning. So access to Reading Eggs includes a subscription that gives you access to Reading Eggs, Reading Express, and Fast Phonics, as well as our Reading Eggs library, which has more than 4,000 titles, including 450 decodable readers. So Reading Eggs is a learn to read program. It explicitly and systematically builds skills in the 5 key pillars. Reading Express is a read to learn program, and it's designed to explicitly and systematically build vocabulary knowledge, comprehension skills, fluency, and overall reading levels. Then we have our newest baby in there, it's Fast Phonics. It's a complete systematic synthetic phonics program. The systematic part means that there is an explicit sequence starting with simple and moving through to more complex phonics knowledge and skills. Sorry for interrupting, Amy, but I'll just let you go back to the actual science now.
Thank you, Amanda. So we're going to start with explicit systematic instruction. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we know that our teachers are being told to use evidence-based science of reading practices. And the great news is that most teachers are already using evidence-based practices. Research suggests it's as high as 78% of Australian teachers. And we know from the research that the foundational principles of phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary are essential. These 5 pillars continue to be at the core of good evidence-based practice for teaching children to read. The research tells us again and again and again, these 5 pillars are essential. But what we want to look at today is what the evidence tells us about how to teach those skills. An enormous body of meta-analysis on educational practices has been undertaken by the researcher John Hattie. Many of you have probably read his work. It might appear in some of your curriculums and syllabuses and in the supporting documents. John Hattie and his colleagues spent decades studying student achievement. They wanted to understand which strategies were the most effective, so teachers could prioritize teaching strategies that had the greatest effect on student understanding. The research is thought to be the world's largest evidence-based study into the factors that improve student learning. So I just want you guys to take a minute to kind of take that in. The world's largest evidence-based study, it's enormous. Hattie's hits, which are the high-impact teaching strategies, is a set of evidence-based teaching practices shown to have significant positive impact on student learning. One of these with particular statistical importance is explicit teaching. And I know that there are some teachers who are getting a lot of information at the moment about explicit teaching. Explicit instruction involves clearly and directly teaching and explaining new concepts, skills, or knowledge to students. This approach breaks down complex tasks or concepts into smaller, more manageable steps and provides detailed explanations of each step. The research is enormously important for reading eggs. Hattie's analysis showed us that using explicit instruction would definitely help our students, so we've integrated it into all of our programs. It gives students clarity, which we know is essential in undertaking the enormous cognitive task of learning to read. So we've unlocked the first part of the research that we're going to focus on today, and that's having a look at the instructional design of reading eggs with explicit instruction. Now let's have a look at how cognitive load theory informs the design of the maps and the lessons. So cognitive load theory proposes that learners have a limited capacity for processing new information at any one time, but there are no known limits on how much stored information can be processed at the one time. Cognitive load theory says that there are different kinds of loads on your brain. In designing programs that work, cognitive load theory highlights the needs to consider the cognitive load, specifically on working memory, in the design of any learning activity. So maybe first we'll have a quick look at the types of load. So first of all, there's working memory. Now think of working memory a little bit like sticky notes or mental sticky notes. It's the part of your brain that holds on to temporary information while you're doing something with it. So if you think about when you're cooking, it's looking up that recipe. You're trying to think of that actor's name. It's doing those quick things and holding that information to tell it very quickly. Working memory also helps you process information and solve problems in the moment. Then there's intrinsic load. Now that's how complex the actual task is that you've set out to undertake. Then there's extraneous load, which is all the unnecessary stuff that distracts you from the task or confusing instructions, things that as adults we probably would just term altogether social media, which distracts us from whatever we're actually supposed to be doing at work. And finally, there's the germane load, and that is the mental effort needed to understand and learn something new. It's like lifting weights for your brain. It can be tiring, but it's really good and it makes you stronger mentally. Now, cognitive load theory suggests that if you want to learn or solve problems effectively, you need to manage these loads. Too much extraneous load can overwhelm your working memory, making it harder to learn or solve problems. So to learn better or solve problems more effectively, you want to minimize distractions. You need to simplify instructions, and you need to practice tasks to reduce students' intrinsic load over time. So let's have a look at how we do that in a reading eggs map. So in reading eggs, all of our maps and activities are structured to reduce extraneous cognitive load so students can focus on the task at hand, which is trying to build new reading skills. And the thing that we know with reading skills is that you need to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. So our programs are designed to be all map-based, which means that we set the course, progression, and then we'll guide children through the program. You can see in the sample maps how children follow a numbered sequence of lessons. This helps anchor students in the program. There's no precious cognitive resources wasted trying to find the right spot. The colours and the highlights will guide children to what lesson they're working on. We want our children to log on and start learning as quickly as possible. The other thing that we tried to do, and this was a very intentional design, was that we wanted every map across Reading Eggs, Reading Express, and Fast Phonics to follow a similar map format. So children don't need to learn a new structure in every program. If you're working in a 3P program, in our Reading Eggs, Reading Express, or Fast Phonics, you know that it's always going to be this lovely map format for them. Cognitive load theory also supports the explicit teaching model that I was talking about from John Hattie, with worked examples and timely feedback being very important. And this also impacts on the individual lesson design in Reading Eggs, which brings us very nicely to our next slide today. And this is about an actual lesson design. So, like I said, working memory is that short-term storage point, and it's really important to think about when you're talking about how children learn to read, because it's where they hold the information temporarily whilst they're doing the task. Now, let's imagine working memory as those sticky notes I was talking about earlier. You can only put so many things on the sticky notes at once before you get completely overwhelmed and you don't know where to look. Cognitive load theory says that when you're learning something new, you need to be careful not to overload your working memory. So what you want to do is, it says, to try to break a big task into smaller chunks, just focusing on one thing at a time. By doing that, you can make sure your working memory stays clear and you can learn more effectively. So the lesson design of every Reading Eggs and Fast Phonics lesson is very simple. We start with a short animated video, followed by guided practice activities and an end of lesson test to check for understanding. You can see how children are guided through this with the left-hand carousel of activities, which is up on the screen at the moment. The videos are short and clear, with spoken instructions for all new content, and the focus is on the content being taught, not distracting from it. But we do know that young learners need to balance with a really engaging design. Students are guided through the activities. They've always got scaffolding with each part of the lesson, and the skills are repeated in different activities to ensure we're building those neural pathways and getting automaticity, and ultimately the goal for all of us, which is reading success. Practically in classrooms, this is a really great feature for teachers. It means that students can be working on different lessons with a different focus, but as a teacher, you're assured they're being taught in short, focused lessons at their own level and at their own pace. So we've gone through how we can use explicit systematic instruction. We've gone through about how cognitive load theory has impacted how we design the maps and also the lesson structure. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about how we ensure that the knowledge from the 5 pillars is always integrated and connected in meaningful ways in the program. I'm going to do a bit of a fangirl moment here. When talking about reading research, it's essential to mention the work of Linnea Airy. Now, Airy is an educational psychologist, and she's an expert on the development of reading. In her research, and her research is broad, if ever you want to do any reading, extra reading on reading research, her work is incredible. But one of her studies was that she found reciprocal relationships between the pillars of knowledge, and that's so in the teaching of these skills, she said that the research showed that there was wide-ranging benefits of teaching and practicing skills together because of the shared cognitive skills and processes, and it's about building those neural pathways for children as they learn to read. This next piece of research I'm going to talk about looks at phonemic awareness and phonics. So maybe we'll quickly define those two terms so that we can make sure that we really understand, because they're two very distinct sets of skills, but they can work together really nicely. So phonemic awareness is the ability to hear and manipulate phonemes in spoken words. Phonemic awareness is an oral skill that can exist without print, but essentially it requires an awareness that words are made up of phonemes, sounds. Phonics teaches the correspondence between those phonemes, sounds in spoken language, and between the graphemes, which are the letters in written language, and how to use these to read and spell words. Now back to Eri. So her research found a beneficial reciprocal relationship to teaching phonological awareness alongside phonics. The reasoning being that the teaching of phonological awareness enhances decoding skills taught in phonics, and the phonics instruction helps students to develop that phonemic sensitivity that's that being able to hear sounds. Our programs integrate this key evidence-based instructional understanding. Phonics skills are taught systematically, but also practiced alongside other reciprocal skills. For example, if you were focusing on letter sounds, within that lessons, we would do phonological awareness skills, but then we'd also do, so phonological awareness skills, so maybe we would do things about finding an animal that starts with the initial sound. And then we might have questions about how many phonemes are in that word. And then we'd bring in the phonics and we'd be asking, okay, now find the letters to make that word. Each activity in Reading Eggs tries to focus on a single new skill, but it's always balanced with these previously taught skills. The science of reading research is clear that the 5 pillars don't happen in isolation, and using that integrated instruction approach helps teachers by strengthening the neural pathways and leading to the ultimate goal, which I said earlier, reading. That's what we want. That's why we're here, right? We want children to be able to read. That's what we get excited about. That's why I wanted to share all the research. Additionally, I'm sure if anybody's played it before, you'll understand that in Reading Eggs, we really insisted on this spiral design in the lesson. So you'll always find previously taught skills alongside new skills. So they're getting that spaced repetition and they're embedding their learning into their long-term memory. And that cycle we know is really, really important. Okay, now I'm going to give you a quick look at how the research works in practice with one of our Reading Eggs lessons. So explicit instruction involves clear and direct teaching of new concepts, skills, and knowledge. And this approach breaks down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. Now, each step is explained and modeled and practiced. And what we're trying to do there is gradually release control to students as they become more proficient. So if we look at one of our early lessons, the objective in this one is stated by Sam the Ant, who is one of our key characters, and we're learning the sound N and the letter N. So it begins with model practice. We're listening for and identifying the sound. We're matching to the letter, listening for words with the initial and final sound N. And this is followed by a series of activities where children are working through that same modeling that we've done. They're then practicing that in the activities. They're identifying the sound, the letter, they're doing letter formation, they're practicing it alongside previously taught sounds and how to blend those sounds that they've been taught together to read words. And throughout all of our lessons, we're checking for understanding. If a student gets an answer wrong, they'll be prompted to try again. And children can always repeat activities again and again and again. Some children we know love to do that. There are others that finish an activity and never want to see it again. But we ensure that our feedback is always delivered low risk. So we try to vary it with prompts. Not that one, try again. And we want them to feel like it's all that they can keep trying until they get it right. Every lesson ends with a quiz, and this ensures that children are getting immediate feedback on the skills achieved, but also that teachers can later go into their teacher dashboard and see the skills that children have learnt. Now, we also have in-class supports which help with that follow the same instructional principles that we've gone through. So Reading Eggs Teaching Guide supports explicit instruction in the classroom. So this is just an example of one of our teaching guides. And the sample page is the opening page. So it will show you the lesson objectives and how these skills are taught in various parts of the lessons where they're practiced, and then how children can apply those skills in the classroom with additional worksheets that you can use in class or at home. So just to recap, Reading Eggs, because next I'm going to go on and talk a little bit about fast phonics. So I'll just round up this one. Reading Eggs delivers its evidence-based design and its principles. It uses that explicit systematic instruction, which we know from the research is essential. We teach those new skills in a logical and manageable sequence for children, and we chunk the skills so that we're reducing the cognitive load, that extraneous cognitive load that we know we don't want children to have to deal with extra things. We always use that modeled and guided, then independent practice model, and we do that in our online lessons, but we also encourage you to do the same thing in your classroom lessons if you would like. And we're always checking for understanding throughout the lesson sequence so that we can give that actionable feedback to teachers to complete the teaching and learning cycle. Okay, now I'm going to talk very quickly about fast phonics. I'm just going to check the time. Okay, I'm good for time. So the fast phonics program, as Amanda mentioned earlier, is a systematic synthetic phonics program. So the online student-centered program is about 20 peaks where children learn key phonics skills, including letter sound recognition, blending, and spelling, and they cover the foundational phonics skills for kindergarten through to Year 2. Now, throughout the program, children are explicitly taught skills, and then they practice these skills and apply them to reading real-life decodable texts. So one of the key activities, and one that I decided to put on the slides for today, is the activity Break It Up. Now, this activity teaches students how to break up words, decode them into individual sounds, and then to blend all the way through the words. Now, this is an essential early reading skill, and so I just wanted to show you how fast phonics does that. So children identify the 3 phonemes, so they'll hear the at, and then they will blend them together to produce the word. You'll see that it always uses those green sound buttons underneath the phonemes so that children can see that we're doing them individually. And then when they're going to blend them on the screen, we'll put a line underneath so that they can visually see that blending through the left to right. With our explicit teaching model in fast phonics, now we know that teachers have been using elements of phonics in their primary classroom for years. I will not tell you my age, but there was a very explicit phonics program used when I was a child, and I loved it. But fast phonics helps support teachers as they move to this more explicit phonics routine for those that may not have used it before in their classrooms or are returning to it maybe after years of not using it. So we put in really extensive teacher supports around fast phonics. There are teaching guides, slide decks, and a really wide range of printable resources, as well as hundreds of decodable readers. And we did that because we knew that this explicit phonics model might be new to some teachers. Now, you don't need to use it, but if you would like to use it, it's there. So you can see in this one that there's that overview is what it would look like. So we've done it a week by week teaching guide for fast phonics. But you'll also see that that is the same activity I was talking about in the lesson. That's a stretched out, that's a printable version. And on the right there, there's also some teacher scripting. So if you're not as confident with explicitly teaching phonics in this way, you can just jump on and use those. So Fast Phonics is a systematic synthetic phonics program, and our teaching guides detail and focus all on segmenting and blending, but it follows the key instructional design principles that I've been talking about in this webinar. So it's got that same explicit systematic instruction, the careful map and lesson structure, that we know, and it's about integrating and connecting the knowledge in meaningful ways. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I'm going to throw across to Amanda now. It's going to talk a little bit to you about the current research.
Yes, we'll give Amy a break from talking, and I will try and get through these slides as quickly as I can. I just wanted to talk to you all and let you know that the research at Reading Eggs never stops. We're always looking at how to improve the outcomes with evidence-based practice, and that's led us to our reading fluency, and it's an area we've recently expanded into. A way to support early reading success is through independent decodable book reading. With a systematic instruction, decodable books offer a great way to practice texts that match the student's current letter sound knowledge. Our library includes 450 decodable books, we are very proud of our library. You can view them all. Actually, we have an online catalogue for the decodable readers and some video content that we'll try and get to you after this, just so that you can look into that some more. So not only that, but best practice evidence for fluency suggests multiple readings help students read more accurately, fluently, and with expression. So to support this, the team have created a reading fluency printable program, which is within your teacher dashboard, where you can download booklets of decodable text, and you're able to use them with students for paired choral readings. There's 16 booklets in there, and they're 10 level text, and these progress from 2 and 3 letter words all the way through to advanced phonics skills. Once your children are able to fluently read and decode books, well, then we've made an easy read aloud feature as part of our library. From there, you actually can we're allowing teachers to assign students any of the titles of the 4,000 books in our Reading Express library, and they're recording their reading, and it's coming back to your teacher dash, so you can assess them in your own time when it's a little bit less hectic in the classroom. So this is just one example of how our research isn't stopping, how we're really trying to make sure the program's evolving with the science, and we are always based in the science of reading. So that will just bring us, so just to wrap it up, thank you for your time. We want you to reach out to our teams if you want any more training on how to use our products in your classroom. I encourage you, if you already have a subscription, to log into your teacher dashboard. You'll find a lot of resources in there, the complete teacher library. We have correlation charts to the Australian Curriculum version 9, a New South Wales syllabus alignment, and a VELS version 2.0 will be in there very soon. But also you'll find all our research white papers in your teaching interface. And if you don't have a subscription, or you're just on a trial, that's all in there. And again, reach out and one of our team will get you any of that content. Sorry, I know Michael's come on. That means we're out of time. So yeah, thank you all very much for listening to us. We're just going to finish. This is a little bit of information about an online pod that we've started. It's a place where you can go and join in an online community of educators. And we really encourage you to get in there and have a look what we've set up. It's good fun in there.